This episode is brought to you by Nespresso and Samra Origins by the Weekend Coffee Collection.
Introducing Samra Origins. My collaboration with Nespresso is a connection to my roots, to my mother, Samra. Coffee that hits the right notes. It transports you. Crafted with unique notes and bold, soaring flavors. Experience a taste that moves you. Nespresso and Samra Origins.
Discover more at Nespresso.com.
Purina believes no one should have to make the impossible choice between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Through the Purple Leash Project, Purina is helping create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind a beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Sorry about that slight hesitancy there. I thought Kieran had something else up his sleeve. It looked like he hadn't finished counting me in, but he had finished with a flourish. I was expecting another flourish. Never mind. It's questions day, Kieran. How are you? Is my first question.
I'm very good. I'm in Brussels.
Ooh,
I'm staying in the Belgian national team hotel because I've been asked to attend a little conference here for Belgian football. So looking forward to that. Except that they're not playing at home, which is a bit of a chore. So there's me and three other people in a hotel, which I think probably houses 200. So you are rattling around a bit.
Oh, well, by sheer coincidence, Kieran, we had our first Brussels sprouts of the autumn.
Did you know?
Yeah, almost subconsciously we're linked in. We're psychologically so entwined, Kieran. My subconscious obviously went, well, he's in Brussels, I'll have to get Brussels sprouts. Is it just you and three injured Belgian footballers then?
I suspect so, yes. I'll explain to them if they are injured that the impact it will have on amortisation, and that way I suspect I'll get the restaurant to myself.
I was going to say I'm very jealous that you're in Belgium, but it's Belgian cuisine's probably not of the highest international standard. But I love Belgium. But is the restaurant open? If there's only you and three other?
No, it's not. It's
closed. Okay. Well, what are you going to do for? I know how you are the chirpiest man in the world, Kieran, but I've seen you hungry. And it's not the smile doesn't go to your eyes when you're hungry. What are you going to do?
I'll just have to. I've got some chewing gum.
Oh, okay.
That's it. It's me and a couple of sticks of Wrigley's to keep me going.
Oh, there is a way of heating a sandwich in a Corby trouser press, but if you haven't got a sandwich, then fine. I'm also quite. I'm on my own. Ali's working, but I'm having trouble sitting down. There's a bit of a chafing issue going on, Kieran. So I did the 26-mile marathon march yesterday for the Palace for Life Foundation, to which you very generously contributed. Thank you very much. And if any of our listeners would like to contribute further, even though we've done it now, they can go to my social media, Twitter page, and the link's there. Or you can go to justgiving.com, FYP, and that would be very kind of you. We had a lovely day, spent a couple of miles marching with Mark Bright, which was great. I love Mark Bright, but he's not a ray of sunshine at the best of times, especially when he's halfway through a marathon march. But it's nice to see Andy Johnson's bum disappearing into the distance. Still ex-professional athlete, still got it. Nice to see Princess Julian flirting for 26 miles. Ran a very hot course. So, Kieran, we have some questions. We have some good questions, Kieran. And we'll start with Danny Cole. And Danny Cole, Coll, Danny Cole says, what would a football landscape look like if there are rules and regulations to say that no Premier League club to have buyback options on players or percentages of future sales, etc., would it be difficult, legal, worthwhile to implement? I should have. A lot of the 26 miles was taken up with people sidling up to me as they overtook us to ask me questions about various reach arounds for Premier League rules. But this is an interesting question. What would the landscape look like if there were no buyback options or percentages of future sales?
Well, yeah, it is a fair question from Danny, because what we have seen in recent years is a significant rise in the proportion of transfers which involve sell-on fees and buybacks and options. This is to protect the development club, for want of a better phrase, and that development club, especially following the introduction of the Elite Player Performance Plan, which is very much geared towards benefiting the interests of the larger clubs. This protects those larger clubs once again. Would it be legal if it was a universal introduction? I think under the auspices of FIFA, though following the Diarra case, could this add further complications? We'd have to wait and see. Would it be difficult? I don't think it'd be that difficult if all the clubs agreed, but I don't see any appetite for it. And the reason for that is that if you have a buyback option or a percentage benefit option, what it does is it reduces the initial transfer fee. So you might have a player that you think is worth £50 million. And I think Liverpool had this with Harvey Elliott, for example. I think in their view, they wanted £50 million for him. But if the stories are correct, and you have to take all of these with a pinch of salt, they were willing to offer a lower fee, a lower sum, say 30, 35, even £40 million, plus 20% of any profits, or in fact, in addition to that, there could have been a buyback that if another club came in for Harvey Elliott, had he been transferred, I think he's gone on loan, had another club that come in for him from, let's say, he went to Villa on a full-time contract, that Liverpool could match that fee, and then it would be down to the player to decide where he wanted to go. So there is an element of benefit to the selling club. So here we would say Liverpool, because it would mean that they would get additional money at a later point in time, or they would effectively get protected from having to outbid somebody. There's a benefit to the buying club, because if Harvey Elliott, well, we use him as an example, if he went from Liverpool Football Club to Aston Villa for £40 million, it meant that Villa would have bought him at a lower fee. So therefore that would have saved them money initially, although it would have reduced their profits at a later date. And it could be argued that it was in the best interest of the player, because if the selling club wanted to sell him, then it allowed for that deal to go through at an earlier stage. So I think there are benefits in the current model. We are seeing a few changes following the Diarra case. And so I'm in Belgium, which is the home of the lawyer who was involved initially in Bosman, Jean-Luc Dupont, and indeed I'm got a call with him lined up in a couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to see how things develop. We might try to get them back onto the show just to show where we're up to. I believe that there has been a couple of cases where players have effectively been now able to buy themselves out of a contract, which was one of the potential repercussions of the Diarra case. So we wait to see developments. There's been no big deal impacted upon it. And certainly if we take a look at the level of spending in the Premier League and the rest of European football, where it is very much driving the global market, there doesn't appear to be any adjustment in terms of transfer fees, which I think some people were fearful of, but that's not manifested itself as yet.
I look forward, Kieran, to asking Monsieur Dupont, which reminds me of my old school French lesson days when we had Monsieur Thibault. The only thing about whom I can remember is that he was an engineer. That's how basically unimpressive my French teaching was. But I would look forward to asking Monsieur Dupont about today's UEFA announcement, which we'll talk about at greater length on Thursday, which seems to be wanting to make multi-club organisations much, much easier to arrange and administer. So we shall talk about that on Thursday, and I'd be interested in having listened to some of the comments he made the last time we spoke to him about multi-club organisations. I'll be very interested to hear what he had to say, in no matter what language he says it in.
Yes.
In fact, I might ask him to do it in Flemish, just because that sounds a bit angrier than French Flemish sometimes. Our next question, Kieran, comes from Quentin Soldan, who's an old friend of the show. He's been with us right from the start. Some people might be saying, hang on a second, this is about the third question Quentin's had asked in 5 or 6 weeks. Well, that's because Quentin clearly thought ahead. And about 18 months ago, Quentin saw the way the land was lying, thinking there's a long old waiting list for these questions. I'll send one in every week, and some of them are bound to slip through. So Quentin's question, and now I'm really looking forward to the answer to this question, because I asked this very question to my son at the start of the season when we happened to be watching Sky one bright Tuesday evening. And Quentin says, how can it possibly be profitable for Sky Sports to broadcast every game with multiple cameras plus a commentator in the early rounds of the Carabao Cup? Is it a loss leader covered by the sponsors? Audience figures for some games must be tiny. I don't think there was a game that you couldn't watch in the first proper rounds of the Carabao, or the first rounds of the Carabao Cup, Kieran. And some of those were played in front of 2,000 people in the stadium. So their TV viewing figures must have been minimal. So how and why are they affording this?
Well, it is part of the new TV deal between Sky and the EFL, which has increased the amount of broadcast media is being produced. Certainly, there's been a significant increase in the number of EFL matches themselves. And we've seen this with more matches now taking place at 12:30 on a Saturday and on Sundays as well. So EFL and Sky have this partnership, and it is worth more money. So that there's more money coming through. In terms of profitability, I think what you will find is that the new deal has effectively replaced iFollow. And for people not familiar with iFollow, I think, was introduced during COVID, and it allowed fans to watch the matches because they couldn't physically attend when we started to come out of sort of the worst parts of COVID. Remember, initially we had a complete shutdown, and that meant that no football was played for 3 to 4 months, and then it was sort of brought back as an opiate of the masses, for want of a better phrase, for a period of months, because nothing was being produced in terms of drama, because you couldn't have people in close proximity. So what were we going to watch? There were plenty of repeats. There was plenty of news, but even so, the excitement, the exhilaration, the adrenaline that is created by live sport was missing. So that was part of the reason for bringing football back. So I don't think there are. When we think of, I think when most people think of multiple cameras, they're thinking of the sort of the spider cams, the camera which is behind the net, the one which is just by the side of the net, because what we see now is when a goal is scored, you do get 8 to 10 angles. For the early rounds of the Carabao Cup, it would have been a couple of cameras, and therefore the ability of Sky to put this out. Sky are incredibly professional. Remember, these matches would have been recorded anyway. Every single EFL match has been recorded for many years, because I used to make a major habit of watching all of the EFL goals on a Saturday night. There used to be that show, I think it was Colin Murray or somebody, on Channel 5. And Sky also have invested heavily in putting their broadcasters, their pundits at every ground. And there's nothing better than going to one of them, and there's something happening behind the commentator, which the crowd is oohing and ahhing about, and he or she can't turn around. That's part of the joy. So there is already a fixed cost, an incurred cost, as far as Sky is concerned. So I don't think they would actually have had to upgrade that significantly to what we have seen. I've spoken to a couple of clubs, especially in League One and League Two, and said, "What's your viewpoint of this new deal?" And the reply I've had is, "We're not particularly happy about it, and the reason for that is that you're losing a few match day fans. We'll have to wait. We're still in the early months of the deal." So in terms of attendances, I think we'll have to wait for those to crystallise. So attendances are down. Yes, there's more money coming from Sky, but 80% of it goes to clubs in the Championship. So you've lost your iFollow money, and the iFollow money, for clubs like Derby when they were in League One, certainly for Wrexham when they were in League One, for those clubs in the lower leagues which had very big followings, was sizable. So they've lost their iFollow money. It has been replaced with the new TV deal. And there is a feeling that attendances aren't on the rise anymore. But yes, it's early days. But certainly the clubs which are, and I've not been trying to stir things here. This is a couple of clubs that have spoken to me, phoned me up about other matters, and they said, "What do you think about it?" I said, "Well, these are the numbers in terms of the increased money and so on." So we wait to see whether it is going to be a success for all 72 clubs, or whether it's mainly going to be beneficial to those in the Championship.
Yeah, I don't think many of those games in the early rounds of the Carabao Cup would have had a pundit or co-commentator. I think you'd be hard-pressed to persuade Alan Smith to go to Barrow v Salford. Don Goodman would probably go to Barrow Salford, but I think Alan Smith would. But I suppose in another respect, Kieran, it's also a good training ground for Sky, for new commentators or up-and-coming commentators as well, who would very rarely get an opportunity to comment on a big Sky game. So you've got a whole group of them who are getting some proper experience. And talking of smaller clubs, Kieran, you remember just last week we spoke to Harry Hugo, the owner, CEO of Farnham Town. So one of the lads with us yesterday, Jesse, is a Palace fanatic, season ticket holder, home and away, but he's part of the youth setup at Farnham Town. It was him who helped us make the interview with Harry possible. So we had nearly 2 hours of the match yesterday was taken up with score updates from Farnham Town.
It sounded a cracking match.
Sort of 3-3,
yes,
with Sutton equalising in the 8th minute of 96 minutes of added time. But a record crowd of 2,400.
Fantastic.
Got the replay on Tuesday night, Farnham Town in the first round of the FA Cup proper for the first time ever, which is fantastic. But also what's very interesting, off the back of some of the initiatives that Harry told us about, was that he consulted with the fans about what the ticket prices should be. As he got in touch with fans and said, "Look, do we cash in here? Do we charge more money than we've ever charged before for a ticket, knowing it will sell out anyway? Would that alienate the fans?" And basically, he took he got all sorts of responses, and he listened. And one fan suggested, "Well, why don't you up the prices, but make sure season ticket holders get their ticket at the initial price, so they're not out front." So I was very impressed to hear that. I'm very impressed to hear a club owner think, "Hang on, before I cash in, let's see what the fans think of this," which I thought was great. And apparently the bars did record business, so it does show you can make business decisions in consultation with fans and still make money.
Yes. There are many, many stakeholders in football. And I think what we have seen at the elite end, considering the chats that we've had with West Ham and Spurs Save Our Seniors and Fulham fans as well, who I've been on Fulham podcasts. And I'm doing Fulham's Supporters Club AGM in a couple of weeks, and it is a sensitive issue. I don't think fans like to be sidelined, and the elite clubs can get away with it. There's no doubt about that. But I'm not being rude to Fulham, because this could equally apply to Brighton or Palace or Bournemouth or whoever it's going to be. I think the people making the decisions need to be aware that there is a possibility that in 3 years' time, you're back in the Championship and you've got Middlesbrough at home on a Tuesday night. And those fans that you've alienated through pricing increases aren't necessarily going to form a long line to come back. So the likes of Manchester United and Liverpool and Chelsea are huge brands. There's no denying that. And I think they can afford to have one pricing strategy. But clubs at other ends of the football, not necessarily. So with that, I've got to say, fair play to Arsenal. Their fourth round League Cup game, they're only asking £25 a ticket, so that's really good. And Brighton have sold, I think, 6,000 tickets, and Arsenal will sell 50,000 tickets.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It will be so some clubs, I think, are more listeners, and some clubs have got owners who are so arrogant that they think they know everything.
This episode of The Price of Football is brought to you by Football 360 Pro Series, an online course in football business and finance which features our very own Kieran Maguire. On the course, you get 10 modules covering everything from football club financial statements to spending restrictions, financial analysis, and accounting for player transfers.
In other words, amortization. The content is broken down into easy-to-consume 15 minutes a day lessons featuring videos and quizzes. And on top of that, Pro Series features 6 weekly sessions with football industry experts, providing expertise and networking in an intimate online classroom environment. If you're looking to take your next step in the football industry, or even you're just an avid amortization curious football fan, Football 360 Pro Series is for you. Our students are all ages and all kinds of backgrounds, but they're united by one thing. They're all footy nerds.
I'm amortization curious. I might sign up for this, Kieran, especially as there's currently a 15% discount for Price of Football listeners when using the discount code POF2025. That's POF2025 for a 15% discount. The course is limited to 20 students, so book your place as soon as possible.
If you've shopped online, chances are you've bought from a business powered by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see at checkout? The one that makes buying so incredibly easy? That's Shopify. And there's a reason so many businesses sell with it, because Shopify makes it incredibly easy to start and run your business. Shopify is the commerce platform behind 10% of all e-commerce in the US. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo.
This episode is sponsored by Shopify. When we started The Price of Football and things started to take off, it all got a bit overwhelming at times as we were suddenly sorting out recordings, interviews, live shows, and our online store. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify.
Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. With Shopify, you get your own design studio that includes hundreds of ready-to-use templates. You can accelerate your content creation with Shopify's AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. And you can easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify.
Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for a £1 per month trial period at shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball, all lowercase. So go to shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.co.uk/priceoffootball. It's certainly an issue at Palace, as we discovered yesterday, because quite a few Palace fans are unhappy with the club charging £40 for the home games in the conference, which I don't mind. I understand there are extra costs involved in putting on European games, but there are fans who don't think they should be paying £10 more for a game against different if it's Bayern Munich, but they don't think they should be paying more against teams like Larnaca or Finland's fifth best team.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned, I'm just so excited about being in Europe. I'd pay whatever it takes. I'm beginning to feel sorry for Bournemouth, Kieran. They're the football finance equivalent of can you do it in Stoke on a wet Wednesday night?
they are superbly run.
They are. They do.
Fair play to them.
Yeah. Our next question comes from Salman Al-Wasamia. Many apologies, Salman, if I haven't pronounced that right. But Salman Al-Wasamia has a question about amortisation, and we are discovering on a weekly basis, Kieran, that amortisation, we can't get to the bottom of it. Just each week you think, well, we can't have any more questions. Surely we've done amortisation, but it's such a complicated issue, and fans, I still genuinely think there are some fans, Kieran, who kind of think it's cheating somehow. They think it's not quite right, and then it's just this instinct that it's yet another way of helping big clubs secure the best players. But Salman says when a player signs a 5-year deal for £50 million, it's amortised at £10 million a year, in brackets, I hope, says Salman, which is pretty much...
Good start, Salman.
Salman, that's pretty much how I approach most of my statements on this pod, with fingers crossed and I hope in brackets. But Salman says, what if after 3 years the player extends his contract by 2 more years? Does the amortisation process extend to the additional 2 years, so the remaining 20 million amortised over 4 years, or does it finish at the end of the original contract 5 years? In which case, Kieran, I assume there's a lump sum to pay off then, is there? Would that be right?
Not quite. What you don't do is you don't go backwards in time. So whatever has happened has happened. So if we take this particular scenario, if there is a change in the useful life, the economic life of the player's contract coming via a contract extension, then what you do is you stop at that point in time and then you say, right, look forwards, let's not look back. And we're now going to amortise over the remaining new life of the contract. So in the case that Salman raised, after 3 years, he rightly concluded that the player's book value would have been 20 million, because it would have been 50 million, less 10, less 10, less 10, so 3 amounts of 10 million, taking us down to 20. And we've now signed a contract extension. So, okay, at the date of the change, let's look forwards. And if we do that, I'm doing this with lots of hand signals, which probably aren't going to help on the podcast. If we look forward now, we've now got 4 years remaining on the contract. The book value of the player is 20. So you take 20 divided by 4 means the amortisation charge going forwards is going to be £5 million a year. And people say, well, why do clubs extend contracts? They do this because actually they can reduce the costs, because what will normally be the case is that if a player signs a contract extension, they'll get a pay rise. So we've seen this with the likes of Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk and so on, and Kevin De Bruyne when he was at Manchester City. But the player might get an extra £2 million a year as far as their pay is concerned. But in the case that Salman gave, the amortisation went down from 10 to 5 a year. So therefore you're saving £5 million. Therefore you can afford to give the player a pay rise, because we always look at things from a budgeting point of view, is how much is going into our PSR calculation. So contract extensions can be beneficial because of what we might refer to as the Chelsea factor. What you are now restricted in doing so is that if the overall length of the contract is more than 5 years, for PSR purposes, it is capped at 5 years. So in this particular case, Salman, if that player had joined the club for £50 million after the change in the rules, there would have been no impact on amortisation. For PSR purposes. It would have continued to be at £10 million a year, but for accounting purposes, it would be 5, and then you have to do some complicated adjustment. And it's, I will say this, and I'll say this again, I am very, very rarely complimentary or towards Chelsea because I've got some skin in the game, as people know. But in this particular issue, I've always defended them. If they want to sign a player on an 8 or a 9 year contract, buyer beware. And if the player turns out to be fantastic, great news for Chelsea. But what happens if the player turns out to be another Winston Bogarde or another Mudryk that we've seen, or if say some other players have gone to them in history and they've not delivered? The players are on good money, so there's no incentive for them to leave, and Chelsea are then on the hook for 8 years. So I don't actually ever have an issue. It was not cheating. I think it was a lack of understanding from other clubs, and certainly a spectacular lack of understanding from the media.
They were some pretty impressive hand signals there, Kieran. You looked like you were landing a plane at one stage. You just needed a table tennis bat in each hand. That notion of you can't go backward in time is a very old friend of mine, a very good comedian, Pierre Hollins, used to do this fantastic description of his mate, who was an old hippie, proper old hippie, with all that implies, who simply couldn't reverse his car because because he couldn't get his head around the concept of going forward in time but backwards in motion. It just couldn't. Somebody else had to do it for him. Our next question comes from Matt Piggins. And Matt says, this is very kind of Matt. Matt says, to give you a break from discussing listeners' schemes of circumnavigating PSR, I'd like to know what you think of my method of getting around sell-on fees. Although I do concede, he says that it would certainly help with PSR if it were feasible. As you know, selling clubs often insert sell-on fees to increase the potential value of a player transfer. Is there anything to stop the buying club when selling the player on at a later date, structuring the sale as a loan with obligation to buy, but with the majority of the fee tied up in a loan fee, thus reducing the amount they have to pass on? I guess clubs might be loath to conduct future business with you where you were to pull these shenanigans, but is there anything to stop it, such as loan fees being included as sell-on fees? I look forward, says Matt, to the inevitable "it depends," which shows, not only by saying "it depends," he's used the word shenanigans, so it shows that Matt has been a listener for quite some time. So well done, Matt. Thank you. I think it's a good question, Kieran. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Paddington Bear of small brain struggled. I kept up for a while, and then I thought, I'll let Kieran sort this one out.
I think what Matt is trying to do is to place himself as the Dick Dastardly of transfer deals. There's a job for you at Stamford Bridge, Matt, I'm sure. What I would say here, and just to sort of unpack that a little bit, I think what Matt was trying to say is, let's say that we buy a player for £20 million and that you're going to sell him, say, in a year later. He's done really well. You can sell him for £50 million. Why not, instead of selling him for £50 million, if you've got to give 20% of the profits away, why not instead put him out on loan, charge a 20 or 30 million pound loan fee, and then sell him for 20 again? Is that way around it? Most contracts, I understand, are structured to prevent such shenanigans. And the reason why I say that is that the initial selling club, what they will do is they will include as clauses in the contract all future fees. So whether that's a loan fee or a sale fee in respect of the player, all future fees go into an overall calculation, and then they get their 20% or 15% or whatever it's going to be as far as the sale of that player is concerned. This is because some clubs have got their fingers burnt historically, I can assure you. So I think it's sort of the lawyers and the accountants are now savvy enough to realise that should a player's registration be sold, it's not just future transfer fees, it's all future fees relating to that registration would be included in the calculations, and that would prevent these types of manipulation.
Okay. Our penultimate question, Kieran, comes from Chris Bullymore. Chris says, would you consider discussing Leicester on your excellent pod? Would we? Yes, we would. Is the club's inability to invest just down to PSR, or are the owners no longer able to willing or fund the losses? Whatever the answer, bad management seems to have ruined the legacy of the Premier League title win. I'll just throw a couple of things in before you answer that question, Kieran. First of all, Leicester are one of those, you mentioned the name Leicester 20 fan and the eyebrows go up. And there seems to be an expectation amongst fans in football that Leicester, somewhere down the line, have still got some points to lose or some money to be fined. Now, I don't know why we necessarily think that. The second bit, it would be such a shame if for any Leicester fan, the current situation ruined the legacy of that Premier League title win. Now, just before the quarter-final of last year's FA Cup, Kieran, I did an interview for The Athletic. And I think at that stage, 7 of the quarter-finalists or 6 of the quarter-finalists, including had never won the FA Cup, so the interview was about the idea of winning the Cup for the first time. And I mentioned in passing that I wonder if you could go back in time, again with the time machine, whether Wigan fans would swap that FA Cup win for not being relegated that season, for still being comfortable in the Premier League. And the answer quite vehemently came back from many Wigan fans, no, we wouldn't. Many of them adding, you've never won the Cup, so you wouldn't know. Right, essentially. Now, I do know, but I was actually, I still haven't fully changed my mind about that question, that statement that I made. But of course, it's quite clear from Wigan fans that they do care what's happened since, but the FA Cup will always be on their trophy cabinet. Their name will always be on the list of winners of the FA Cup. So I think it would be a terrible shame if Leicester fans were to allow what's going on, which at the moment isn't desperately bad. They're just in the Championship for the moment. They're one of that group of teams who will almost inevitably be back in the Premier League. You would guess in the next season or 3, because that's how history has showed us it works. But what's your take on the current Leicester situation?
Yeah, I would again. I'd say to Chris, what happened in 2016 can never, ever be taken away from you. The admiration that you got from fans of probably 85, 86 other clubs was genuine and real. So I don't think it has ruined the legacy. They've got that Premier League title win. They've got those moments forever. What happened in subsequent years was a consequence of a bit like Icarus. They flew too close to the sun, in the sense that in 2016-17, people forget that Leicester City got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League.
Yeah.
And on the basis of that, they recruited players and they set up a budget. And also, I think people forget that Leicester almost qualified for the Champions League on at least 2 occasions, and I think they finished just one or 2 places below. They had a couple of sort of one of them, or the opposite of one of them, finishes to seasons when things just fell apart at the very end. The issue that Leicester had was on the basis of winning the Premier League. They started to pay wages which were on the basis of getting into Europe, on the basis of a top 6 finish in the Premier League. And when they didn't manifest themselves on a couple of occasions, there was a big gap in terms of what we were seeing as far as the finances. I think in one particular season, they actually ended up paying out more in wages than they actually generated in revenue. And I think that's only happened on that one occasion as far as the Premier League is concerned. So they did try to match the spending. And you and I, we're old enough to remember when Coventry City won the FA Cup.
Yeah.
And again, I can still remember Keith Houchin's goal. For me, one of the greatest goals in FA Cup history.
Yeah.
Fantastic day out. And I remember, was it John Still who was the manager?
Yeah.
He says, right, following that, we're not going to be shopping at the corner shop. We're going to be shopping at Harrods.
Yeah.
And that works until it doesn't work. And that's what we've seen here as far as Leicester is concerned. So Leicester's owners did put in an awful lot of money initially. There have been changes in circumstances. I think King Power are not as profitable as it used to be. They were severely hit by COVID because the nature of King Power's business was effectively duty-free, concentrating in the Asian markets, and there has been a significant change to that. They do have borrowings mainly from the owners of £226 million. I think the owners have actually written off some loans in order to get down to that £226 million. If we take a look at the actual accounts, they're pretty grim. They lost £200 million over the last 3 years, and that would have been £350 million had it not been for player sales. So they were reliant on James Maddison and Kieran Dewsbury Hall and other players leaving for significant fees in order to try to keep on the right side of PSR. I think it's fair to say that they might have been subject to some form of PSR sanctions, but friend of the show and an all-round good guy, Nick DeMarco, successfully defended them. My understanding is that they are still potentially up on a charge for their losses for the 3 years ended the 30th of June 2024. And I expect they will have made significant losses in 2025 as well. So therefore, they could be subject to an EFL charge when their 2025 accounts come out. So yes, the finances don't look good. They've had to go to Macquarie on regular occasions to forward collect the money from player sales through some invoice discounting. I suspect the interest rates are quite significant on those deals as well. So yes, the finances are not great. They are in receipt of parachute payments this season, which will help. There certainly has been, Jamie Vardy's no longer at the club, so they've shifted some of the higher earners away, so the wage bill will be down, but they have relatively little room to manoeuvre, and I think that was evidenced by their relatively low spending when they were promoted back to the Premier League, in 24-25, they were certainly a selling club. And looking at their net spend, which is something I'm always slightly wary about, their net spend has been negative in recent years, and it's not just for 1 year, it's year in, year out, since the challenges have arisen financially. So yes, they're not in a great place financially. They're not in a terrible one either. They simply have to box clever.
Well, in terms of boxing clever, Kieran, that the Macquarie situation, which we did discuss on a questions pod, I think, recently, and I probably should have asked you this question then. But when a club goes to Macquarie or responds to Macquarie's invitation, do you see that as a sensible business practice, or does that set alarm bells going off?
It's logical. If you've got a load of IOUs from player sales sitting in the chairman's or the chief executive's front drawer, cashing them in makes some sense. But Macquarie aren't doing this out of care for Leicester City Football Club. They're doing it for a pure financial reason. It's business, and I have absolutely no issue with that. Tony Soprano operated in that. Don Corleone worked in the same way as that as well. Don't take it personally when a club does this. Macquarie do very well on the back of this. Why is it that some clubs are doing it and we're seeing different strategies from other clubs? It's because the owners are able to lend money to the clubs, or the owners are able to put money in the form of new shares, and therefore there's no interest charges. So I think it's the alarm bell rather than bells for me is that I think this is further evidence that the owners of Leicester City Football Club don't have sufficient cash, or they don't have the desire to put sufficient cash in to allow the day-to-day expenses to be paid, and therefore they've had to go down the route of using Macquarie as a provider of funds with the interest costs that arise.
Hey, business owners, we know you know the importance of maximizing every dollar. With the Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business American Express card, you can make your expenses work just as hard as you. From afternoon coffee runs to stocking office supplies and even team dinners, you can earn miles on all your business expenses. Plus, you can earn 125,000 bonus miles for a limited time through October 29th. The Delta SkyMiles Reserve Business Card. If you travel, you know. Minimum spending requirements and terms apply. Offer ends October 29th, 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. We could all use more time. Amazon Business offers smart business buying solutions, so you can spend more time growing your business and less time doing the admin. I can see why they call it smart. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
I have to say, Kieran, if I was a Leicester fan, listening to you say, no, it's all perfectly standard business practice. This is what Tony Soprano and Don Corleone do. I'm not entirely sure I'd find that reassuring, to be honest. Are we able to go? That was part of Chris's question. Are the owners no longer willing to fund the losses? Do we have any indication that they have lost that desire to keep funding the club to such an extent? Are they a club that you would be happy to look for other owners, or is the emotional attachment to the fan base and to what's gone on in previous years still strong?
Every club is in play, in my view. Are they actively seeking a buyer? No. And there are certainly other clubs, and there are other clubs in the Premier League who I would have on. If I was to rank them 1 to 20, Leicester would not be number one.
Right.
Who I think is most likely to be sold next. So all owners are willing to listen, and I think the people behind King Power, King Top, I think he's known. He's getting flack from the Leicester City fan base. I don't know what his response to that flack is. For example, it could be he might take the view of, well, it's part of the brickbats of being a club owner, and it happens at all clubs. Or he might take a view, my family's been very generous custodians to this club, and we have delivered the FA Cup and the Premier League title and the quarter-final of the Champions League. I think it's time to move on. We've got no idea, but you can understand both perspectives being taken.
Yeah, James Cooper has our final question, and it's a topical one considering it's that time of year for NFL at Wembley and Spurs again. James Cooper says, do you have any idea what the average overall income per fan as an NBA and NFL game is compared to a Premier League game? So we're talking about the yield here, Kieran, are we?
Oh, yes.
It's just the yield, yeah.
For the NFL, from my understanding, it is it's around about $120, $110, $120. It works as around about £90 per fan per match.
Oh, okay.
That's certainly lower than the amounts that you see quoted for the NFL matches, which are being hosted at Tottenham. But these figures that I picked up are from 2022. So I suspect that they've risen since then. I would wager that they're now more than £100. As far as the NBA is concerned, again, these figures are from 2022. There's not much transparency in American franchise sport, as far as there isn't the equivalent of Companies House. Because somebody did actually suggest to me that I'm not a huge NFL fan, that I set up the price of NFL and I did some background research, and my ability to nerd out it would be very much constrained. So therefore, we didn't go ahead with that particular project. Because I don't think we'd have been able to get the figures, and then by the time I factored in the divorce, it really wasn't worth it.
Yeah, plus me getting the hump.
Yeah.
I'm humped enough that you're doing a podcast with Mark Clattenburg now, Kieran. That one sneaked up unexpectedly. Did you forget that they might put it out on social media? I thought that NFL figure would be higher, Kieran, I have to say. I think in my head, and along with a lot of English football fans, you had this notion of NFL fans getting there in the morning for the tailgate party or whatever it is, and spending a fortune on. To be fair, that mainly comes from Homer Simpson, I think, but you kind of think there's a lot of hot dogs and beer sold at NFL games. And so,
well, that's right. I mean, I think that is the ticket yield.
Right. Okay. Right.
I suspect that the catering yield is going to take that further up. And remember that I think it's only 18 games.
Yeah.
So there's sort of 9 home games.
Yeah.
And it is a family experience. So, if you think about it, Ma and Pa and Ma Junior and Pa Junior, that's still 360 quid for a single match.
Yeah, that's true.
They do have season tickets.
They do. Yeah.
And there is a different culture as far as American fans are concerned, is that the reselling of tickets isn't subject to the same attitudes and legal restraints that we have here in the UK. And so therefore that £90 ticket might go for 150, but the club wouldn't get the extra money,
right,
whereas here, because the clubs tend to resell them. So NFL £90. So these are 2022 figures. So I'd expect a 10 to 15% increase. NBA was 67. As far as the Premier League is concerned, and I'm going to quote these figures gross of VAT in the sense of this is what the fans pay. We do have Spurs and Arsenal at the top of the tree with about 115, Chelsea at 95, Manchester United around about 90, Manchester City much lower, 62. And that's not that's not saying, well, Manchester City are being kinder to fans. It's a reflection of global fan bases.
Yeah,
sure. I'm not digging out City fans because I spent many a year on the Kippax myself. If we then drop down, and I was having this discussion, ironically with a Danish journalist about Newcastle United as to whether they should go for a new stadium. See, Newcastle are getting around about £45 per fan per match. That's far less than half of Arsenal and Spurs. So therefore, perhaps they need to increase. For yours, Palace are at 32. Again, that includes VAT. You've got seniors, you've got kids coming along, you've got the season ticket holders, and so on. You've got 3,000, 2,500 fans at £30, which works out as 24 net by the time you knock off the VAT from away fans. So that's why we've ended up here. So what you tend to see in the NFL is that they all are actually quite close as far as prices are concerned, whereas what we have here in the UK, because we have a 2-tier football system, and again, this is not a criticism or this isn't a snipe at anybody. Some football clubs are global brands, and some football clubs aren't. And you're not going to get if you're going to try to charge £60 for Brighton versus Burnley at 12:30 on a Saturday. Well, good luck. It's simply not going to take place, whether that's at Turf or at the Amex or wherever. And I deliberately haven't mentioned Bournemouth there, and also Bournemouth is a separate position because they've got 11,000 capacity stadium. Yeah. So you have to put all of these things into consideration.
Yeah. I think Palace could win the Premier League 3 years in a row, and it still wouldn't affect our global fan base. very sweet situation at the end of the Kiev game in Poland when the 16-strong branch of the Polish Crystal Palace Supporters Club revealed themselves. So they'd been in with the Kiev fans and waited for them to disappear, and obviously got a massive round of support. Yeah, but you've got Spurs with about 3,500 people flying in from Southeast Asia every second Sunday. We've got 16 Polish lads in that, which was great. Of course, Arsenal, and this will be another story for our news pod this week, Arsenal considering an expansion of their ground even further, with possibly playing at Wembley for a year. So that's a story we'll look at in more detail on our next pod. In the meantime, thanks to everyone who has joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join that club too, get every episode a day earlier than everyone else, ad-free listening and invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes, and more, then go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. You can follow us on Twitter and find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our books or a Price of Football t-shirt, just go back to that same website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with that news pod. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell, pausing only to say I shall see you bright and early at the airport for our trip to Belfast on Tuesday morning. Bright and very fucking early on our trip, to Belfast on Tuesday morning. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in that brilliant city.
Well, I'm working all day in Brussels on Monday, so I get home very late Monday night, and then it's over to Belfast. Yes, there. I have some making up to do at home. I've not told her that I'm going to see the Psychedelic Furs tonight. I get back as well.
You get to see the Psychedelic Furs?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be honest here, Kieran. I only know 2 Psychedelic Furs songs, but they're
both brilliant.
They're such good songs. The same with Everyone Pretty in Pink and Into You Like They Are. Oh man, he was a. Is he still the same singer?
Yeah.
Is he still as grumpy as he?
Oh, has he been on Buzzcocks?
No. He was too cool to do that sort of thing.
Oh, right.
I just remember certain interviews from the 80s on the only person he seemed to answer questions to was Paulie Yates. He somehow seemed to brighten up a little bit when Paulie Yates, God rest his soul, was asking him questions, but he was a tricky old interviewer at the time. But oh god, those two, they're where you seen them?
Hastings.
Oh,
Hastings? Yeah, somewhere weird. Hastings or Bexhill. Somewhere bonkers.
You slightly took the glamour out of that situation.
Yes.
I was Hastings, Bexhill. I don't like to think of that grumpy old man dragging his arse out to Bexhill now.
The Delaware Pavilion.
Oh, the Delaware Pavilion's fantastic. What a beautiful building that is.
Yeah. I saw the dead Kennedys there. I think they were very confused.
I think they probably were. It's a suburb of London, lads. Yeah, it'd be fine. It's great. Yeah. Perhaps should we end this pod now, Kieran? Rather than...
Yes, I think we should.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Price of Football. The Price of Football.